Kia ora, Arkonga. This is a video that will build a pretty bad version of Google, but it will give you an idea of how computers have to be coded to search for stuff and how they have to sort of do it very kind of mathematically in some ways. This isn't the whole of how Google works. Google has lots of different tricks and tools and apps and things that help it run as fast as it does, but this is the beginning kind of lesson in how search works. And this one's called the linear search, where you're basically just going to run all the way down the list of stuff that you've got until you find what you're looking for. So pretty straightforward. So what we first all in Scratch, we're going to build this. We're going to start with the green flag just to start off our program. And the first thing you need to understand is that Google and all the other things that we search on the internet, like even YouTube, they're actually referred to as databases, okay, or databases. So the first thing we need is a database that we can search through. Now in Scratch we have variables where I can save a piece of information like my points or my timer, but it also goes beyond that. I can make a list of information, a bit more like Google. So I can make a list and I'm going to call it my database or database. Okay, and you can see here now I've got a list ready to go where I could actually save all of the websites of the world, and that would be my Google. So the first thing I'm going to do as part of my program is so that I can add names each time and add to my list. I'm going to make sure I start by deleting anything that's in my database already, just to show you how search works. You wouldn't do that in real life, but this is just to show you how the search works. Then I'm going to broadcast a task where I'm actually going to then each time just fill up. So I'm going to add, so this is going to be a database of names, so I'm going to add names to database. That's going to be my first message, my first task to do, so that when I receive that job, all I'm going to do is under my variables now I've got lots of code I can do with my database, and all I need to do is insert. I'm going to insert 5 names, so I need to duplicate that one and then duplicate those 2 and duplicate that one, like that. Okay, so I've got 5 things I can add, and I just need to come up with 5 names. So I'm going to do John, and I'm going to do Lexi, and I'm going to do Ashley, and I'm going to do Steve, and I will do Rosemary. That's my mum's name. How about that? Right, so there's 5 names. All right, they're each going to go in at number 1 each time. So now when my program runs, it's going to, there you go, each time it will blank it, it will delete it all, and then fill it up with those 5 names. I've now got 5 names, a little list. Imagine that's a tiny version of Google I can now search for. Okay, so the next step of my app is I'm going to run the search. So I'm going to broadcast, again, to keep it nice and organized, I'm going to broadcast a task, a message, to say now find a name. Okay. So that when I receive that, after I've filled it up, I can now receive that as another job to do, and I can find a name. All right. So the first thing in Scratch we have to do is a bit like Google, is we've got to actually come up with a box that says, what are you looking for? So under sensing, I can ask, what are you looking for? Okay. And I've got whatever they say held in this variable, this answer variable here. So the first thing I need to do is save that. So I'm going to create a variable to save it. So make a variable, and this is what they are looking for. Okay. And so I can now set what they're looking for as whatever their answer is. Okay. So you can drag that on, and now I can save it under that orange looking for. Okay. Now the way that computers look for stuff is this. I'm going to draw, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to draw myself a really bad arrow, because I'm just going to show you with my mouse here how computers actually look for stuff on a linear search. Here's an arrow. This is called a pointer, and if I have a pointer that I can say is set to number 1, it will then point. I can get it to point at number 1 on the list. And if it's what I'm looking for, then great. If it's not, I move the pointer to number 2 and I say, well, is that the one I'm looking for? And then if it's not, I can move it to number 3, and I can say, is what I'm looking for the same as what's on the pointer number on the list? And this is the idea of using a pointer, or sometimes it's called an index number, and I can move this around on my list to say, is that number there the same as the one that I'm looking for? And that's how basically computers do a search of a list. All right, so going back to my cat here, and going back to the code, I now need to make sure I set a pointer. So I need a number, which is actually what number it's looking at. So I'm going to create another variable called pointer. Every search Google thing, every list search has a pointer, and I now need to make sure I set that back to 0 at the beginning, so it's ready to start checking the list. And now I need to repeat my checking, like I just did here with my arrow. I need to keep repeating this check, is that the one, is that the one, until I get to the end of my list. So that to me sounds like I need a piece of code under the control called repeat until. So repeat my check, my search, until I get to the end of the list. Okay, so that's done by saying repeat until equals, so I put my equals in, and I can say my pointer, repeat this until my pointer is the same number as the length of the database. There you go, the length of the list. So when my pointer's got down, if I move my pointer number down to number 5, and that's the same as the last one on the list, then that's when it's going to stop looking. Okay? So now I need a simple if. If they're the same, they've found it. If they're not, then move on. So here we go. Control if, throw my if in, and all I'm now saying is if, again, they're the same, equals, if they're the same. So if, now going back to my list code, I can actually say the item on the database. This is code for doing something with the list, and this is code for something that's on the list or an item. So I can drag this in. If the item, now it's not going to be number 1 every time I do a check, it's going to be wherever my pointer is. So I'm going to move my pointer in here and say that if the pointer item on the database is what I am looking for. So I've saved that, haven't I? So set looking for is the answer, pointer to 0, repeat until the pointer gets to the end of the list. If the pointer, the item of the pointer on the database is what I'm looking for, then I'm going to say, a bit like Google would, I'm going to say for 5 seconds that, and this is where I'm going to get a bit clever with Scratch. I'm going to join a couple of things together. I'm going to join, I found it at list position, then put a space at the end of that, and then I can put under my variable, I can say wherever the pointer got to. There you go. So it's going to say that I found that thing that you're looking for at number 5 on the list, or whatever, and it's going to say that for 5 seconds. Okay? Then if it has found it, I can stop it all because I've found my search. My search has worked. If it does all of those checkings and it keeps moving the pointer down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it doesn't find anything, then after my search, if I haven't stopped it all, I want to then say not on the list. And that just says it's not there and it's ready for another search. Now, the last thing I need to do on this code is I need to make sure that every time it does a check, if it doesn't find it, it moves the pointer down to the next number. So I need to go to my variables and I need to make sure I've got here that before the if, we change the pointer starting with 0 up to number 1, you see, because that will start it on the list. And then every time if it doesn't find it, it will repeat and it will go to the pointer will go to number 2 and then number 3 and then number 4. So it's changing pointer by 1 every time to go down the list. And that's going to be doing this moving the arrow thing. Okay. So now let's give it a go. Okay. So I'm going to move the cat over here and we're going to click the green flag. It says, what are you looking for? I'm going to say Ashley because it's halfway down the list. And I click this, and when I click this, it says found I found it at list position 3, which is correct. Excellent. And when I click the green flag again, if I search for something that's not on the list, like Tom, it's going to go through and just say not on the list because it didn't find it at any of those pointer positions. And that is how searching works in a linear search, the most basic way a computer can work down a list, with a pointer and a variable that you're looking for. Kia ora, Akonga. Thanks.